Perfect. Thank you guys for having me. I consider it a big privilege to be down here and speak with you guys. I was an undergraduate student here a number of years ago and actually met my wife down here, the very lovely Linda. And so I have a special place in my heart for BYU. I teach adjunct faculty up at the University of Utah, so I kind of have these dual allegiances.
I never mentioned where you went.
I'm on a little bit of a high right now, and I'm going to tell you why. About a half an hour before I came in, I was Skyping or Google Hangouting, if that's the term, with my son. He's in Brazil. And so he's been out about 7 months. And, you know, a month ago, I would have never thought I'd be having this discussion or conversation in front of a group down here. It was just incredible to be able to talk to him. So my wife's on the phone, I'm on the phone, and we're hearing about a baptism he had this week. It was just so much fun to share with him and learn of his experiences. So hopefully some of you have had that same experience with siblings or friends or you know, whoever it may be. But it's really a special blessing, and I'm so thankful that we had to have that opportunity. So I want to share with you, and Scott teed this up beautifully. I'm not necessarily going to give you any business tidbits today on how to start a business. I am going to try to inspire you to want to start a business. And one of the big benefits, I usually mention this when I'm mentoring students or talking to other people that are interested in starting a business, so I'm going to throw that out to you. One of the beautiful things about being able to have a business is you can kind of control your schedule. You can control what you want to do with your life. And I will tell you, I've had my consulting firm now going on 22 years. And at first it was a lot of, you know, pulling up the boots and not having a lot of free time. But now as my business has matured and I have partners and managing partners, it allows me the freedom to do some really, really wonderful things, really pursue things that I want to do in my life. And so as I'm speaking today, I want you to be thinking about, you know, big picture stuff. What do you want to do in your life? And business is great, marriage is great, but at its very core, what do you want to do? I love talking to youth groups specifically about doing difficult things, doing hard things. And so I'm going to start off with that a little bit, and then I'm going to share a little bit more of the goal that I'm working on and some future goals. And then everybody always likes to hear about Mount Everest. So I'll show some pictures about Mount Everest and talk about that. Does that sound like a good tea for today? Okay, very good. So I always start off my presentations by saying, let's see if we can get it going here. Bear with me. Try that again. Okay. There we go. I always start off by saying namaste. And so who can tell me who this is? Who knows who that is? Dalai Lama. If you don't know who this is, you need to figure this guy out. You need to read about him because he's he's the current leader of the Buddhist faith. And when you go to Nepal or areas of India, the greeting, and this is a very traditional greeting, you put your hands together like this and bow and say namaste. So I'm going to say that to you, and then you have to say that back to me. So namaste. Love it, love it. It essentially means the goodness in me recognizes the goodness in all of you, and you're saying the same thing back to me. As Americans, we kind of get in the habit of just saying, hey, what's up? How are you doing? And I love the namaste because it makes it a little more personal to people. I really like it. It's kind of like a hug just in emotion there. It's really nice. So I want to talk about doing difficult things for just a second here. And everybody's difficult is going to be different. Starting a business is absolutely not an easy thing to do. Entrepreneurship is not an easy thing to do. Getting into BYU is not an easy thing to do. So I will give you guys some kudos right here. My hat is tipped to you for just being here and being students at BYU. But I really like this quote from President Beck. We have a legacy of doing hard things in the church. We've always done hard things and will continue to do hard things. Hard things stretch us and allow us to bless others. Our youth are the future of the church, and they must be prepared for the difficult days ahead. I think when he talks about legacy of doing hard things, I'm going to ask for a raise of hands. How many of you have pioneer ancestry? I'm going to raise both hands because I've got it on both sides of my family. That's a lot of us in here. We have those pioneers to thank essentially for kind of us being here. My family came over from, my great-great-great-grandfather came over from England. Without the church, it's likely he may not have ever come over here. So very difficult. He was baptized at 15. His family disowned him, and he came over here to the United States. So I have a lot to be thankful for with him. But that was certainly very, very difficult for him to do something like that, and I owe a lot to him. So again, I want you to be thinking about something difficult that you want to consider, or something you want to work on difficult in your life. Sometimes I personally think there's something to doing physically difficult things, like climbing, running, things like that. I think there's a combined effort there when you're doing physically difficult things and accomplishing goals, rather than just doing other difficult things, but that's just me. I realize everybody's not in the same mindset. They don't like to do physically difficult things, but sometimes I encourage people to run. I like running marathons. Anybody run marathons in here? Oh, I see a few hands. Nice. Very good. So if you have ever considered that might be a goal that you want to set, for a few years down the road. I would bet there's some people in here who could jump off the couch and run a marathon, but for most of us, you have to train. And there's something that goes into setting those small goals to get to that larger goal. Another quote here, this is Pope Paul VI, and he essentially kind of says the same thing, and I like this quote from him as well. All life demands struggles. Those who have everything given to them become lazy, selfish, and insensitive to the real values of life. The very striving and hard work that we so constantly try to avoid is the major building block of the person we are today. I love that quote, and I totally agree with it. You need to, there's nothing wrong with struggle. There's nothing wrong with doing difficult things. Don't avoid it. When I give firesides and I talk to youth groups, I usually go through speaking in public or speaking in church. That's, I think, one of the top 2 or 3 fears of most individuals. And so I usually encourage folks, if the bishop or somebody in the bishopric asks, take them up on the offer. Go for it. Overcome those fears. You'd be surprised how much stronger you are when you answer that call and speak and overcome it. Not necessarily saying it's going to be easy, but it is definitely worth doing. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. Okay? So this is what I choose to do difficult with my free time. This is just something that I love, that I enjoy, that kind of scratches an itch for me. I love to climb. I love to travel. And as a kid, I always wanted to climb Mount Everest. I always wanted to climb to the high point of the planet, but I didn't really know how I was going to do that. And somebody opened me up to this 7 Summits challenge, where essentially you climb the 7 high points on the 7 different continents. And there's another one down here in Antarctica. It's just off the bottom of the screen right there. But the challenge is you climb all the high points of the 7 different continents. So I was fortunate enough to finish that in 2016. I did a couple extras on the list for extra credit. I did Mont Blanc, which is in France, on the border of France and Italy. And the reason that some people do this one here is because they don't consider Elbrus part of Europe. And so I did both of those. And then for extra credit, I climbed Kosciuszko down in Australia, because some people don't think this is part of the Australian or Oceanic continent. So this larger area, including New Zealand and parts of Melanesia, is called Oceania. So people will climb both of these as well. The number of folks that have done the 7, it's getting larger now. It's about 400 people. The number that have done all 9 of these, it's less than about 30 people. So it's not a very big group. So that got me thinking. I thought, okay, what's my next goal? Because I've already got to be working towards something. And I was doing some research, and somebody turned me on to the fact that you could climb the 7 volcanic summits. I thought, okay, that sounds cool. I would still want to climb. I'm fairly young and healthy. I want to keep doing that. So I started ticking off the list of high volcanic summits. So I went down to Mexico and climbed Pico de Orizaba. I'm sure some of you have served missions down there or seen that before. Yes, Mexico is part of North America, if you were unaware of your geography. And they also have really big mountains down there. It's almost 19,000 feet tall, so it's really big. It's bigger than anything in the continental United States. It has a permanent glacier on it. I went down to Chile and climbed Ojos del Salado, which is actually the highest volcano in the world. I was fortunate enough last summer to go to Iran, and I'm going to show you 2 pictures from Iran in a second here, because you're not going to meet too many Americans that have been to Iran. So I was able to go to Iran last summer. I am a true-blooded American. I did have a very good time going to Iran. I had a very good experience, but I'm probably not, I don't ever want to go back. And then I still, this summer, so I have 2 left to finish the 7 volcanic summits. I've got to go to Mount Gilloway, which is in Papua New Guinea, and then the last one, which is down here in Antarctica next winter, our winter, their summer. I'm going to go back down to Antarctica and climb Mount Sidley and then go to the South Pole. So that's the end of at least, my goals here for climbing on this planet. My bigger goal is to go to the moon and climb to the high point of the moon. It's called the Selenium Summit, and I heard some of you chuckle, which is great. I've heard Jim Harbaugh. Who's heard of Jim Harbaugh before? He's a football coach. I've heard him speak a couple of times, and he said if you don't set your goals high enough that it causes people to laugh, your goals aren't big enough. I said, okay, I get it. So nobody has been to the high point of the moon yet. It was only identified about 3 or 4 years ago. It's called the Selenium Summit. It's about 32,000 feet tall. It is volcanic in origin, by the way, so I could get like a couple more out of the way there if I do that. So let's just see how it goes. If you saw over the weekend, SpaceX sent a rocket to the International Space Station. Anybody know the name of the dummy that was on the shuttle or on the rocket they sent? Ripley. Yes, from Aliens. You're right. Very good. We'll give you points for that. That was very good. Nice work. So that's kind of my larger goal. That's what I want to accomplish here. Again, I couldn't do that if I didn't have a business that allowed me these opportunities, and not only to do this, but serve in the church, spend lots of time with my family, and do lots of other good things. So hopefully that's some encouragement to consider starting a business or doing something along those lines. Here's a couple pictures of Iran. So there are a lot of propaganda photos. You can see this one. This is the Ayatollah right there, and this is kind of their equivalent of the White House, where the Ayatollah's residence and where he has meetings. This is a photo, and that other picture, that was right across the street from the former embassy. Most of you in here are too young to have remembered this, but I'm old enough that when I was younger, the Iranians stormed the embassy there and took 70-something Americans hostage and held them for like 444 days. Scott would remember this when we were younger, and it was big. It was a big deal. So really, that was in '79. So between then and essentially kind of now, it's been 40 years. Americans really don't travel to Iran that frequently. This is the wall of the former embassy, and they were actually nice enough to let us go visit. We couldn't go in the embassy, but we could walk along the sidewalk and see some of the anti-American propaganda. I will tell you that everybody that we were with was nothing but nice, and they said, don't pay any attention to this anti-American rhetoric. It's our government. It's not us. We really like America, and I would say that was very true. The whole time we were there, I was there about 9 days climbing the volcano, and we had handlers with us from the Iranian government the entire time, and they kept us very safe. So we had a very, very good experience there. Others don't. I'm not going to push my luck and go back again. So there's my Iran story. Let me shift focus and talk to you guys about Everest for a minute or two here. And then if you want to stick around afterwards, I brought some show and tell. So we're going to go up and have some question and answer. And if you want to ask some questions about climbing, I'll answer any questions that you want. And I brought some climbing equipment to show you, and then I have a couple other things to show you guys as well. So there's a little plug for afterwards. We'll see how that goes. So everybody usually asks, where is Nepal? Nepal is just to the north of India, right here. Here's the Himalayas, and this is China or Tibet. If you've ever seen like stickers on the back of old Jeeps that say Free Tibet, anybody seen that before? So the Chinese rolled into Tibet in 1950 and took it over. The reason that they did that was so they could do nuclear testing up here. They tested hydrogen bombs and other bombs out here. So they rolled in and took that area over. Some people still call it Tibet, but it's generally considered China. And the Everest sits right on the border between Nepal and China. You can climb from both sides if you want. The Nepal side, if you look at the statistics, a little more dangerous than the Chinese side. But the Nepal side is a little warmer than climbing from the Tibetan side. So lots of pros and cons between the two. This is the mountain right here. This isn't my photo, but just really briefly, base camp sits right about down here. And when you're at base camp, this is 17,500. It's taller than anything here in the United States. I live close to the base of Timpanogos, which is 11,000 something. This is almost 3 times the height of Timpanogos. So if you're used to looking at Timpanogos, which is a beautiful mountain, this is almost 3 times the height of Timpanogos here in Utah Valley. But when you're at the base, you can't see the summit of it. And when you climb Everest, you do what's called rotations. So you're going to go to Camp 1, spend a night, and then you come down and rest for a few days. And by the way, when you go, it's about a 2-month commitment. So it takes a while to go do this, and it's incredibly difficult on your body. So you're going to rest at base camp. You might do that again and come all the way back down. If you're feeling good, then you're going to go to Camp 2, spend a night, come back down. You might do that a second time. So this is your 3rd or 4th rotation. You're going to come back down and rest. And this is about a month's worth of climbing right here. Maybe at week 5 or 6, you'll go all the way to Camp 3, spend the night, and then you're going to come back down and rest for about a week before you go to the summit. When you actually go to the summit, you're going to skip Camp 1 and spend the night here. You're going to spend the night here. Everybody asks, where do you start with the supplemental oxygen? And that would be at Camp 3 right here. So you're breathing bottled oxygen, and it makes a huge difference on your body. In fact, I'm going to tease you with some show and tell right now. Here is the, and if you come afterwards, you can take a look at this. I'll pass it around and let you guys take a look. This is essentially what you put on. This is a respirator. And do you guys want to see me put this on? Yeah. Okay. So this goes around your neck like this. And then that goes up over your face like that. This, can you guys hear me okay? Cool? All right. This goes into your backpack, and you're carrying a couple of oxygen cylinders like that. And it makes a massive difference. They say breathing about 3 liters a minute, it lowers your effective elevation by about 3,000 feet. So if you're at 23,000 feet and you're breathing 3 liters a minute, it takes you down to about 20,000 feet. Big difference. Huge difference. My oxygen ran out as I was going towards the balcony here when I was on my summit night before I got a new bottle changed over. And what was interesting is I could feel the blood starting to retract back into my core. Because if you think about it, to survive, and by the way, from about here up is the death zone. You've heard of the death zone before. There's not enough oxygen for our bodies to survive. The physiology just doesn't work. We're not engineered to live in that atmosphere, that elevation. And so if you were to stay there for, it would vary by individual, but if you were to stay there without supplemental oxygen or food for 2, 3, 4 days, you would die. There's no question about it. I've never died before, but you do feel like you're dying. You don't feel good. That's for sure. It's not really healthy. So if you think about survival, the blood, really you just need, brain, heart, and lungs to survive. You don't need digestion. You don't need reproduction. You really don't even need your appendages. It's just this. So all your blood is coming back to your core. And that's, people always ask, the main question I get, so I'm going to answer it for you right now. There's about 3 or 4 questions I get. Everybody says, how do you go to the bathroom? And I'm going to answer it right now. You don't, because nothing comes out of you liquid or solid when you're in the death zone. So from about here up and back down, that was about 2.5, 3 days. The bathroom, I didn't have any need to go to the bathroom because you end up spending about 30 or 35,000 calories a day just to stay alive. You can't take that much food into your body. And so what happens is your body starts attacking itself. So I lost my whole trip while I was gone, I lost about 18 pounds. but I think I lost about 1.5 pounds or a pound from each side of my chest. And then on my bum back here, I lost about 1 pound or 1.5 pounds of just raw muscle. It doesn't take fat, it wants muscle. So when I came home and got in the shower, my wife looked at my backside and said, "Your butt's gone." So I had, you know, from when I was a teenager, I had muscle up here really high on my buns, and it just vanished. And I know that's funny. She's like, "I want that back." You know, in fact, I lost enough of it that when I run all the time. When I started running again, it impacted my gait, because you don't realize how much of your stride comes out of your buns, and it impacted my gait. And I think some of the definitely muscles come back, but I don't think my derriere looks the same like it used to. So we had to ask my wife. So it is weird, though, to not go to the bathroom. I don't mind sharing with you, I'm as regular as a Swiss clock, even today, Swiss train, and it's really weird not to have to go to the bathroom. I was a little nervous that when I came, everybody said when you go back down, it'll turn back on, don't worry about it. And I was a little nervous, so when I came back down to Camp 3 right here, it turned on with a vengeance, and I was looking for the for the crevasse to find a place to go to the bathroom. But so anyway, there's a little nugget about the death zone. You don't go to the bathroom. So if anybody asks, the other question that people ask all the time is, do you see dead bodies up here? And the answer is yes. They theorize there's like 256 bodies from here up, and this is the summit pyramid right here. And you know, you ask, why are they there? And the answer is, it's just too difficult to get them down. And so as you're climbing, you're faced with these folks that as the sun melts, it burns the snow off, and there's bodies right there. And so we had a discussion about it before we went up. You know, just keep eyes forward, try not to focus on those types of things. And I didn't, and I'm not encouraging anybody to do this. If you want, you can go online and see, you know, photos of this. I did not take any out of respect for those that have passed. But I will tell you this, there was a guy, I know he's Italian because I looked him up, but it took about 1.5 years, and there was a guy kind of hunched over, and as you're climbing up, his face is right there. What's really eerie about it is with the cold temps and it's super dry at elevation, nobody deteriorates. So they almost look like a wax figure. And this guy, I looked at him, and his image kind of haunted me. So about 1.5 years after I came home, I looked him up on the web and read a little bit about him and read about his family. It was interesting to read about him. But other than that, I don't normally focus on death that much. But you are close to kind of your mortality there. And so it really makes you kind of think and really focus on understanding that you're mortal. And I remember being your age and thinking I was invincible, and generally everybody is invincible, but when you get older you start feeling it a little bit more. Okay, let me show you this little video clip right here. My son found this for me on the web, but it's just kind of a Is it okay? Is that too loud? Okay. Two more video clips. And I'm going to show you a summit photo in a minute, but it does essentially look like that at the very top right there. From base camp to the summit and back down, people ask this one as well, so I'm going to answer it for you right now. It's about 5 days. And you think, why can't you go faster? And it just doesn't work. It doesn't translate that way. I looked it up one time, and the distance from the bottom to the top is only like 3.1 miles or something like that. So it's not a very big distance. It's just really difficult on your body to go up an elevation like that. So really quickly, this is the summit right here. This is all cloud, and that is not cloud. That is wind about 100 miles an hour. It's the jet stream. So remember, the top of this is 29,000 feet. It's almost 30,000 feet, the elevation you'd fly in a plane. And the jet stream is always blowing at the summit. And it's blowing at 100 plus miles an hour. It's really disconcerting down here at base camp because you can hear it blowing up there. Remember, at base camp, you can't see the summit of it. This is an adjacent peak called Kalapatar that you can hike up and see the summit of this. You can, with relative effort, I mean, it's going to take some effort, but you could get to this point fairly easily trekking towards base camp. And I usually talk to people about going to Nepal and trekking to base camp. This isn't hyperbole when I say just going there for 2 or 3 weeks and spending time in this region of the world will change your life. The people there are so kind and so nice. When people come to visit me here in Utah, especially members not of our faith, you hear people say things like, there's just something different about being here. People are really nice here. Who's heard that before? You feel that way when you go here. You're around all these Buddhists and monks. You feel that way here. There's something special about this location. And people, you could show up at somebody's door and say you were hungry, and they would feed you. If you showed up and said, I'm cold, they're going to give you their coat. They're just genuinely really super nice people. So this is us at base camp, and there's the KHUMBU right back there. This is our Sherpa, THILE NURU. That's him right there. He'd been to the summit 8 times. When we went to the summit, that was his 9th summit. He's a high elevation Sherpa. They have lots of other ones that are lower elevation guys, but there's only about 30 or 40 of these guys that work high up on the mountain. It is a monopoly. It's like a Teamsters union. They're all related. They're all uncles and brothers, and nobody else can break into the profession. It's just these guys. He was awesome. If you ever meet another summiter that says that they went to the summit and did it themselves, you can call them out. They're lying. There's no way I would have ever gotten to the summit if it wasn't for him right here. They do all the heavy lifting for you. So before we went up to the summit, he's up there putting these oxygen cylinders, in strategic locations for us. So when we get there, they're just there for us to use. So we only had to carry 1 or 2 at a time at the most. That's just one of about 50 things that he does for us. So anybody that says they summited without help, no, they're not being entirely truthful with themselves. Very good.
Climbing Mount Everest is one of the greatest challenges known to man. It's certainly among the most perilous. Don Baylor reports in the past 3 days,
Thank you.
6 people have died on the world's tallest mountain.
Death on Everest comes in many forms, from violence to silence. Avalanches to heart-stopping cold. Last Thursday, a 25-year-old Nepalese guide fell to his death. Since Friday, a Dutch climber, an Australian woman, and an Indian man are suspected to have succumbed to altitude sickness. Death by drowning on a mountain 29,000 feet above sea level.
When it gets really bad, you get water pooling in your lungs, water pooling in your brain, and it can be fatal in just a day or so when it strikes at a very serious level.
Jim Davidson knows Everest stagers well. He was there last year when an earthquake and avalanche killed 19 people.
Things have improved over the years, but we'll never get the risk down to zero because it's a dangerous game and a lot of things can go on by altitude.
At sea level, oxygen makes up about 21% of air. At higher altitude, it's 21% as well. But in the thin air, there are fewer oxygen molecules per breath. At 18,000 feet, 1 breath of air has half the amount of oxygen than at sea level.
So close.
2 expert American climbers, Adrian Ballinger and Corey Richards, expected to summit today, are using live Snapchats to show the world the extremes climbers endure. Since Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary first conquered Everest in 1953, 4,000 climbers have managed to do the same, but over 260 have died trying to reach the heavens. Today, the bodies of 2 more Indian climbers were found.
Too many climbers trying to descend at the same time may have led to bottlenecks that people at the higher altitude sort of path to ignore. Since 1900, at least 1 person has died on Everest every year.
We'll be watching that 2 American climbers if we have a good time. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the year I was climbing, there were 9 deaths the year, but usually on an average year, it's about 6 or 7 people pass away on both sides of the mountain when you're climbing. So it's around you, it's there. When you leave base camp, I've got a series of pictures here that are going to show us to the summit, and then we'll wrap up in just a second. But when you leave base camp, you go through the KHUMBU ice fall, and some people say that this is the most dangerous part. I don't, this is definitely dangerous, but the Lhotse face I think is more dangerous than this, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. But you know, you're climbing across ladders and things like this, so these crevasses might be, you know, 100 meters deep, 200-300 feet deep, something like that. You can't climb down and back up out of this, so they just use these ladders to scale across them. You know, and you're crossing things like this. There's another one. This is 5 ladders, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yes, when you get on this, if you do too much of this, it will shake the ladder a little bit. So you just have to kind of get comfortable with this kind of a thing. It's not something you would necessarily practice at home, although I did take the ladder out on the lawn and put my crampons and boots on and walk across the ladder just to see how it would go. And it's surprisingly intuitive. It works pretty decently, but you just have to be careful with your footing and really, really focus on the steps you're taking so you don't slip. You are tied in. There's a static line the entire way up the route all the way to the summit. So the minute you step in the KHUMBU, all the way to the top, there's a team of locals. They're called the ice fall doctors, and nobody goes above base camp until they have set the line all the way to the top. So there is a safety line or a fixed line all the way to the summit, and you're not supposed to go on the mountain until that's been put in by the ice fall doctors. There's about 12 of them. In fact, it was super unfortunate, but the first fatality of I climbed in 2013. The first fatality of the season was one of the ice fall doctors passed away up there setting the rope for us. This is a shot from Camp 3, and you're looking down what's called the Western Coombe. So Camp 2, if you remember back to that, the picture I was showing you a little bit ago, Camp 2 is there, and we're at Camp 3 right here. If you look at this picture, there's Camp 3 right there, and this is the Lhotse face. I think this is way more dangerous than the KHUMBU ice fall, which is down here, and base camp is down over this direction right there. So when you leave Camp 3, you essentially get in line with like 100 of your best friends, and so everybody's all lined up like this, and you're generally going to be on supplemental oxygen unless you're a native like this guy. They have done some testing. Their DNA is different than us. These guys are supermen, we're mortals. The THILE that we climbed with, he knew we thought we were pretty cool and pretty strong climbers, but he would carry 3 times what we did, and he would be ahead of us with no supplemental oxygen, and we're sucking on 3 liters a minute trying to keep up with him with 1/3 the weight, and we couldn't. He was that much stronger than us, and they're just supermen, how strong these guys are. There's another shot of climbing up the Lhotse face. So this is towards the top of the Lhotse face, and then you traverse across. This was on our way down, and so we're rappelling down off of kind of this side of the photo, and you've got all these people lined up like this. People always ask, is there an up and a down? Yes, it's just this right here. So when you're going down and traversing across this, you're using the same rope that these guys are coming up on it. And it does get a little challenging, but mostly everybody's really nice as you're kind of going around them and going on your way down. There is nothing that says you have to have a red suit. It's just that's what a lot of people use. I chose a blue suit, little cougar roots right there. I had a blue suit. So we'll show you at the summit. I have my blue suit on. My buddy wore a red suit, but generally you want to wear anything that's contrasting with the snow. So I didn't see anybody with a white suit. That would be kind of silly, but everybody else had, you know, contrasting color.
Look at this scene at Mount Everest. Each of those lights in the distance there, a climber, 4 had died with that. So many are trying to get to the top right now.
These are images from high up on Everest. The path to the peak clogged with climbers, as many as 200 gambling with their very lives. In this time-lapse video, you can see the headlamps of the climbers nearing the 29,000-foot peak.
Looking at the black mountain, you can see at least 100 pinpricks of light, all on a vertical line going straight into the stars.
The logjam has been caused by so many people rushing to get to the top on the last weekend of the climbing season. But the going is slow, and the oxygen runs out quickly as they pass through the notorious death zone made it to the top, including a 73-year-old Japanese woman who is now the oldest person to ever
Amazing.
climb Mount Everest.
Amazing.
And an American climber collapsed on his way down, and his rated climber found him and abandoned his own summit attempt to carry him to safety. Both are now suffering severe frostbite. Everest dangers are well known. The single deadliest descent when 8 people perished in 1996.
When things start going wrong and the clock starts ticking away, that's when things can go wrong in a big way and in a hurry.
This year, there are just too many people on the mountain, making the treacherous trek to the top of the world that much more dangerous. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, New York.
So I put a couple of those video clips in there just because it gives you a little more perspective on what's happening on the mountain. We're almost to the top here, guys. So this is the South Col. So if you read the book Into Thin Air by John Krakauer or saw the Everest movie, a lot of that is happening right here at the South Col. So if you remember reading about Beck Weathers, he was back over here somewhere, and he was really close to Camp 3. The wind was blowing so hard nobody could hear him at base camp, and it was a whiteout. And it was dark. He couldn't see where he needed to be. And you could easily walk off that way or walk this way off the mountain if you weren't oriented correctly. But this is generally where you're going to stage before you go to the summit. This is the south summit right here. It's not even the true summit. And halfway up is called the balcony. So that's halfway up the summit pyramid right there. You generally will leave about 7 o'clock at night. This is not my picture. I wish it was, because it's a really cool shot. But I pulled it off the web, and I just love it because it shows the route. But generally, you start at about 7 at night. This is from an adjacent peak called Lhotse. And you're going to go up the face like this, traverse across. You're going to change oxygen cylinders right here at the balcony, and then you're going to go towards the summit. And this isn't the summit. It's around back on the other side of this. It's out of focus right here. So we start at 7 o'clock and summit at about 7:30 in the morning, 7:29 or something like that in the morning. So you're climbing all night. I watched the Big Dipper go over my head, and then what was really neat, something I won't forget, I'll show you a picture of one of the things I'll never forget. I also won't ever forget the sunrise coming up over Tibet. It was just amazing. And you can see the curvature of the earth from that elevation, despite what other people may tell you. That's the other thing I saw. For about 5 minutes, you get this really cool sunrise shadow from the mountain like that. So it's really neat to see that. Yep, that's what you get up there. It only lasts for about 5 minutes. You got to be quick with your photography. That's the summit ridge. So right here is the Hillary Step. If anybody's heard of the Hillary Step, that's the Hillary Step. And can you see these climbers right here at the top of the screen? So these guys are going, that's the true summit right there. So you're on the south summit. You're going to go across and climb up like this. Can you see some of the fixed ropes right here? You're going to go up like this, right over like that. We were already on our way down with this photograph. Let me show you this one right here. What do you notice about the horizon? Does it look flat, or can you see a curve to it? I think you can see a curve to it. So this is the summit ridge, and we'd already been to the top. We were coming back, and my friend Steve took a picture of me standing over right there. So let's see. That's me just standing there, very cold. And look at all these people that are going up to the summit right there. Thankfully, we were about 10, 11, and 12 to summit. We summited on May 19th. And all these people were going up behind us. This particular day, and they keep stats on all this stuff, there were about 154 people that summited the day we summited because it was just perfect weather. You can see the sky is completely blue. No wind at the summit. I'm going to show you a couple summit photos in a minute. It was about as calm as this room in here. It was we estimate about 25 degrees below zero. Okay. And they're zooming in a little bit more. Here's the Hillary Step with people going towards the top right there. And then just zoomed in a little bit more. This is from the top looking down, so all these people are just at the top of the Hillary Step. In fact, it's unbelievable, but to go from here to the top, and I'm almost to the top right here. This was on my way back down. I snapped a photo of this. To go from here to the top is about an hour and a half. And the reason why it looks so close, you take a step, and then you're going to take 3 breaths. Really slow. And then you're going to take another step like that. You're moving that slowly. You're like sloth mode. It's just really hard to move at that elevation. It's incredibly difficult. You just feel totally depleted, and that's fast. You know, other people, they just kind of run out of gas and they turn around and go back down. Okay? So if you're able to make it and put all this stuff together, that is what you get at the very summit right there. So I always take the stars and stripes to the top, and then I live in a community called Alpine, and so I always took my Alpine flag to the summit of all my peaks as well. So that's us standing on the summit. Did you notice the blue cougar suit, guys? Got the blue cougar suit right there. Very good. And then this is looking back over Nepal right there. We also managed to snap this photo at the very summit. So, so my friend Steve, he's a good member of the church, and when I left, I set a goal to read the Book of Mormon while I was gone, because there's a ton of downtime. You know, the climbing is exciting and it's very fun. I love it, but the climbing is only about 20% of the time. The rest of the time you're just acclimatizing. So you're sitting around. It's not very glamorous. You're just waiting for your body to adjust health-wise. And so I set a goal to read the Book of Mormon, which I did accomplish. I had no intention of taking it to the summit. My bright friend Steve, when we were at Camp 2, because every ounce matters, my bright friend Steve said, "Do you think a Book of Mormon's ever been to the top?" And I said, "I have no idea." He goes, "We should take it." I said, "That is a great idea. You carry it." So he carried it to the summit. So it now is both of ours. He posted it on Facebook, and the Deseret News saw it. And within 24 hours of us being home, they called and said, "We need to do a story on you guys." So you can Google it. They did a really fun story on us. And as a tease, if you guys come to the question and answer period afterwards, I'll let you take a look at it. So I brought it with me right here if you want to take a look at it. We both signed it, and I've taken it to the peaks of other mountains, and I've had it down to Antarctica and things like that. So you can take a look at it. The other thing that I always do at the summits of mountains is sing High on a Mountaintop. So the words to that are in here as well. So we belted it out from the top of Everest right there. As far as we know, this is the only Book of Mormon that's ever been to the summit of Everest. I didn't leave it. I brought it back. So you can come take an Instagram photo or whatever you want with it. That's fine with me. You can take it, just make sure and be respectful to it. Okay, so wrapping up really briefly here, everybody always asks, what's the very top look like? That's it right there. That's the stuff on the very, very top of it. That's usually filled in with snow, but it melted off. They ask you out of respect for other religious faiths, don't stand on the very summit, which I did not do, because there are at least 3 faiths that believe their deity resides at the very top. So I am not going to trample on anybody's religious faith, but I did reach over and touch that little tiny spire because I wasn't going to go the whole way and not touch the very top. So I did that, but I didn't disturb any deity or anything that I am aware of. And then that's a nice panoramic shot at the top. You can see this is an Indian flag, and it's not even blowing in the breeze. It was just, pristine, perfect condition. And everybody asks, how big is the top? That's the top right there. So there's not a whole lot of room at the top right there. Okay, so I want to finish with encouraging you guys to do something difficult. Set a goal to do something difficult. Do hard things. Okay? Thank you, guys.